Assalamu alaikum, respected students. I welcome you all to another lecture of Neurological Physical Therapy. Today we are going to discuss the main points about motor control and motor learning. As I have already discussed in the start of this semester that before mid we'll basically discuss and revise the basic anatomy and physiology that is relevant, and after that we'll discuss the major assessment procedures that are used in neurological physical therapy. And after we will go towards the basic concepts that underlie the your rehabilitation in neurological PT patients, and what are the different techniques and different school of thoughts, and what are the different basic theories that underlie those uh, like rehabilitation programs. So starting from that, today we are going to discuss about the motor control. What is motor control? Then we'll discuss about the feedback and feedforward control. We'll discuss in today's lecture regarding the theories of motor control, about open loop and control loop control systems. We'll discuss about the motor learning and theories of motor learning. So what will be the learning outcomes of today's lecture? I hope that by the end of this lecture, you must be able to understand what is meant by motor control and how a motor control is established, and what are different factors and what are different theories that control this lecture, that control this aspect of your movement. So today's lecture is a bit dig down into the theoretical side of motor control, and what is the theoretical background that will underlie your rehabilitation programs and your different rehabilitation theories. So you need to establish a theoretical background on which the different techniques are overlying. So this is the basis that you should understand today, that what is the motor control and what are the different factors it is linked with. Same another concept, the basic concept for today's discussion will be the what is the motor learning and what are its different stages, and how it is achieved, and what are the specifications of each stage. That is the main learning outcomes for today's lecture. So starting today's lecture, first concept we are going to discuss is what is motor control. So this is simply motor control. You can say it is the way we'll see that how different aspects are related of movement are interrelated with each other. It deals not only with nervous control of your movement, but also your physical and behavioral aspects of the movement. So actually a simple movement is not just a movement in its term. It's not simple or robotic movements. In human being it has some neurological aspects, it has some, even it has some behavioral aspects. Simple, if you take a simplest example of drinking water, every different individual will perform this simple movement in different manner. It will have a simple behavior associated with that. Like if you are drinking water and you have in mind that you have to follow the sunnah, then you will like sit down and you will say Bismillah Rahman Rahim. This is a simple behavioral aspect of your movement associated with the simple activity of drinking water, and dividing into three steps, and all this is a behavioral aspect of movement. So motor control deals with all the aspects of the movement, because in human the movement is not simply a robotic movement and command and action. It has some sensory effects, it has some behavioral aspects, it has some physical and logical effects aspects along with that. So the information processing for our motor behavior, it occurs in stages. The first is stimulus. What kind of stimulus is provided for you? And stimulus can be of various time. It can be an auditory stimulus, ammi ki awaaz. It can be some visual stimulus. It can be some tactile stimulus. So there are a variety of stimulus that can be provided for you. The next stage is stimulus identification. Now this is the stage, stimulus identification, where your CNS integration is and your cognitive skills are involved, where you try to identify the stimulus, like what kind of stimulus is this? Is your mind or body familiar with this, or it is a new kind of stimulus? All this comes in the stimulus identification. The next is response selection. All the, if you like see that to a similar stimulus, different persons will respond differently. So that is actually your mind game, where your CNS selects from a variety of responses which response is going to be executed. So that is your response selection. What kind of movement you are going to show, what will be your response, that is your response selection. And then if you have selected a certain response, then you will go for the response programming. Obviously, for to execution of that response, you need certain like motor programs. Your certain muscles will be active, your stabilizers, your agonist, antagonist, your force, direction, all these will be programmed. So that is all in the response programming. There will be coordinated movement, and ultimately there will be a movement production. So actually the state motor control is a very divided into many stages, and each stage is equally important. Starting from the stimulant till the execution of the movement, there are many steps that are involved in that, and CNS has to integrate all the information and then decide which kind of response you are going to show, and then the response is integrated and then the movement is executed. So now, as I have already mentioned, that each and every aspect of this is important. So for the first step was stimuli. If the stimulus is very strong, stimulus is very precise, then obviously it will lead to the increased attention and information processing. Just like say that if a teacher is like teaching in a very formative and very loud sound, it will increase your attention towards the patient, and you will have to listen to him. So this is that precise and strong stimuli usually result in increased attention and information processing. On the other hand, if the stimulus is very low, teacher's sound is very inaudible, you are not completely understanding, there are many chances that your attention will be diverted. So it simply means same is the case with your patient. If you are giving strong commands, precise commands, you will have greater attention of the patient. Similarly, simple commands, precise commands are easy to proceed. On the other hand, complicated and a new pattern which is not familiar with the patient or the student or the person in either case, then it will take more time for the stimulus identification. That is the why that whenever we are presented with some new theory or some new method of learning, it will take some time to adapt to that. So that is the thing, that with a complicated and new pattern of stimulus is performed, they take more time for prolonged stimulus identification. The person take more time to respond to that stimulus. So there is a term which is called the motor plan. Actually, this is the from that is where the motor programming is done in your CNS. A motor program is actually an idea or plan for the purposeful movement, and that motor plan is also composed of certain motor programs. They are simple component motor programs that lead to a motor plan, and motor plan is simply a overall complete idea and plan for a purposeful movement. And the motor plans are actually present in our CNS. Our brain have motor plans. It have ideas for the purposeful movement, and that are made up of motor programs. So coming toward the response programming, I have already discussed in the previously that response programming is an very important aspect. Here, your neurocontrol systems in your brain, they translate the idea for the movement into muscular action. And what kind of muscular action? That muscular action is defined by the motor program. Like motor program says that your elbow will flex, your shoulder will flex, your wrist will flex. This is simple motor programs, and hence an idea is then translated into a motor program, and actually the motor program will lead to then a muscular action. So this is response programming, how a motor response is programmed in your brain. Now coming to a more detail of what is a motor program, I have discussed that motor program will lead to a motor plan, and actually the motor plan is the thing that will lead to your action. So motor program is just like a program you build for something, like you do the brain storming, that you will do this thing, this and this and this, you will do this for that, you will add up these elements, and you will get these things for your, like say you are planning a programming a party, and you will know that first there will only an idea in your mind, and you will think about that you need this for that, you need that thing, you need that thing, and then you collect this thing, and then finally a program is executed. So just like this is a motor program where an abstract representation is in your mind. Program or to program is just an abstract representation. This is just an idea that will result in the production of coordinated movements. So actually, it is a set of programmed instructions that will be then sent to set of effectors that will lead to a action. So simply, motor program is programmed instructions, or it is an idea of motor action that will be executed later on. But that idea is usually affected by a number of factors: behavioral factors, environmental factors, or personality factors. So there are many factors that will be affecting these. So complex and lengthier movement sequences increase the duration of processing. If you are planning to do something complex and lengthier and it is complicated, obviously it will take more time. Same is the case with the body. If the movement it is planning to do is complex and it is lengthier, then the processing time is increased. Now this is just like you see the complexity of movement. It can range from a very simple movement, even you can see the stroke patients or your CP patients, it is difficult for them to even take a step or even pick up a thing. That is a difficult movement for them. And to ranging from the normal movement that a normal person can perform, and ranging from that movement that an expert can perform, like the gymnast. So actually, the complexity and the movement complexity can has various forms, and it can like raise a marked up to that level where you can even walk on a simple one rope. So that is the complexity of the movement that can be achieved with practice. So actually, whenever a movement is executed, it has three basic factors. What is the task? The movement itself. Who is the individual? His age, his personality, his body, his flexibility, all that comes in the individual. And what is the environment in which it is going to be executed? So a whole movement is not only a movement, it depends on three things. What is the task? Who is the individual? And what is the environment in which it is executed? So coming towards another idea of that is feedback and feed forward control. Feed forward control simply means anticipatory control, in advance control. That there are some postural body adjustments in advance of the signal. Like you are driving a car and like just a few steps before the signal, you see that the signal gets red, and then you will obviously slow down the speed, or you will obviously apply the brake. So this is the signals in advance to the incoming sensory feedback or a future motor command. You will start to your brain will start to take steps for that, or you see a hurdle in front of that, obviously your body will adjust for that, or you see a bus coming towards you, obviously your body will make adjustment according to that, and you will like step back, or you will apply the brake. And so it is in advance of the um, sensory feedback. There is another type of control that is called feedback control. Actually, feedback is a response dependent. It is response dependent sensory information, and actually it is produced during or after the movement. Like you have performed a movement, and after that you consider either the movement was right or wrong. Just like after attempting the paper, you like consider, oh, I have written it right or wrong. So that is the kind of feedback which is given in the feedback control during or after the execution of the movement. Then there are feedback is given, and actually this the kind of feedback is more related with the corrections. The next time you will perform this that thing, you will perform in a better manner. So this is related with the corrective actions. And feed forward, that is anticipatory, that is in advance adjustments that are required for certain activities. Now, coming towards the theories of motor control, there are multiple theories that define motor control. First of all, there is a theory you have already studied, and from metric we are studying this theory that is called hierarchical theories. It is where you see that the center, your CNS, is the main control, and it control every each and every aspect of your movements. And you should remember that you have studied that whenever a nail or a flame touches your finger, then sensory stimulus is sent to the brain, and then the motor response is coming back, and then you will just put your hand back. So this was the previous theory, hierarchical theory, where we always consider top management controlling each and every aspects, and the control runs from the top to the down direction, from higher to lower centers. And cortex was always in control. Each and every movement is sent to the cortex, and it weighs the movement, and then the control is developed. But it cannot it this theory doesn't satisfy reflex actions, those involuntary actions which are not regulated by, and which doesn't include our conscious awareness. So it doesn't satisfy those aspects of the movement. So the latest theory which tries to explain this is that various part of brain and various spinal centers work cooperatively to perform a movement, and CNS is not always the in charge. Just like consider that you are in a university and it has a higher management, or you are the department and you have a head. Then each and every action of you cannot be monitored by the head. Some things and some duties will have to be assigned to the individual lecturer or the individual employee. The head or the management can hold of each and every aspect. Same is the case with the CNS, because we have limited attention span, we have limited effort span. So the shifting locus of neurocontrol is very important. So many areas of the CNS are actually not only cortex. So many areas of the CNS are engaged for, especially for the complex task, and few areas will be engaged if there is some simple movements. But cortex is not always in charge. It is free in for many responsibilities. It is free from the responsibilities, especially where the many repetitive tasks are there. Then the many other centers can take the hold. So there are certain cognitive structures when they come into actions. When we say that cortex is not always in charge, there are many various spinal centers, and there are various CNS centers that can help out the cortex and free him from the responsibility. So there are certain situations when there are motor programs which come to help us. There are stored motor programs in our brain that allow the movement to be produced even when there is no sensory feedback, or even when there is limited sensory feedback situations. So we have motor programs. Even if we don't have the time for the sensory feedback for each and every part of the movement, or feedback situation is not there, is the you don't have visual feedback, light is not there, or you don't have the somatosensory feedback, you are standing on some kind of foam, then we have some motor programs in our brain that help us uh, uh, in this situation. And motor programs are very effective because they free us from the conscious decision about each and every movement, and also it coordinate things in a way that multiple degree of freedom can be achieved. We have already discussed what is degree of freedom, what are degrees of freedom. So it reduces the problem, and we are not always in a hassle of producing a conscious decision. Just consider an example of developing a habit. Like you have to develop a habit of, say, brushing your teeth in the morning. So it will be difficult for you in the start. Obviously you will have to force yourself, and sometimes you will be very conscious and you will feel like a burden. But as the time passes, this activity will become so automatic, and you will become so used to that even after a few months or after a few years, that sometimes we forget even that we either we have brushed our teeth or we haven't brushed our teeth today, because that activity is so much now occurring on the unconscious level. So that is an example of motor program. The motor program is filled in your brain, and then the activity is doesn't require the conscious effort and conscious decision each and every time. So there are certain systems which are called open loop versus closed loop control system. So open loop controlled systems are simply kind of open, where there is the person is not having the time or for the feedback, or the proper feedback or process deduction is not there. So in that case, simply programmed instructions will be set to the set of effectors, which is called as a motor program. So motor programs are programmed instructions in your brain. So programmed instructions are sent to a set of effectors, and there will be no requirement of feedback or error deduction. So same just like that, if one is playing very fast piano, so there is no time for error detection process. If you are writing very fast, so there is no time for the error detection and for the sensory feedback. So that is an example of open loop system. Coming towards the closed loop system, now both of the situations are very important and both of the systems are very important. In certain situations we need open loop system, and in certain situations we need closed loop system. In closed loop control system, feedback and a reference of correctness is very important. Whenever you are learning a new skill and learning any new thing, you need some kind of feedback, and you need to correct, and you need to see whether you have performed it accurately or there are some problems in that. So in that case we need closed loop system, where you need some kind of corrections and improvements in your performance. There the closed loop system is there, where the feedback is given to your mind, and the reference of correctness is given your mind, and you you perform an activity and you see it yourself, and feedback is given by your mind and to your mind, and then you will perform the next time it in a better manner. Now there is a control which is called intermittent control. It is a blending of both open loop and closed loop control processes. So in that case, as you can see, that it is a blending of both. As I have already said you that both of these types of controls are very necessary. Sometimes even if you say you are just doing your exam paper, so in the start of the paper, most of the time you are relaxed, you have time, you look for the corrections, you ponder upon I have written right or wrong, and you will go for the closed loop control system. But if by the end of the paper, when you are rushing and you are running out of time, then your open loop system is there, and you just write down whatever comes in your mind, and you don't have time to ponder upon the sensory feedback and the correction. So actually, an intermittent control is there to help out in situations, and just blending of both open loop and closed loop processes. So motor programs simply provide us with a generalized code and scheme, which is called a schema. So rather than having very specific degrees and very specific like this much force of contraction and this much degree of contraction, this much firing of the muscle, rather than that a generalized code and schema is given, and after that there can be variation. Like just taking an example of you, when you're writing down, there will be much variation in a simple action of writing something. So actually when you have feedback time, you will refine and you will get the movement perfect, and if you don't have time, then you will just write down whatever writing and whatever comes into your mind. So you have schemas in your mind, and then muscle synergies, they also come and play in action to provide a controlled and coordinated movement pattern. And you are well aware what are muscle synergies. Then muscles are functionally linked with each other to perform, and how they are linked? They are linked with certain schema under the control of some motor program. So this is the mechanism how these all are linked together. This is simply how the things are linked with each other. Now coming towards the next concept, that was motor learning. Motor learning, simply it is how you are learning new skills. simply how you are improving the accuracy, perfectness, smoothness, and correcting your movements every time you are performing. So this is called motor learning. Just like taking an example, if you are learning a new skill, you are learning a new manipulation, you are learning a new mobilization, that all come under motor learning, and all the basic processes of motor learning will be there in the process of motor learning. So simply, motor learning, it is internal process in which you will require some practice or experience. You just can't learn mobilization by seeing a video of mobilization unless you practice it yourself, because it is a skill. You need certain movements of your hands, you need certain motor programs to be developed in your mind, and then your hands will execute the motion in that manner with practice and experience. So at motor learning of the program, when with practice and experience, some permanent changes takes in your capability of performing some skill, like a simple person who haven't performed the manual therapy in his life, it will be very difficult for him to perform a specific manipulation that may appears to be very simple to you, because you have practiced it and you have experience for that, and you are well aware with the position of the hands, and the motor programs are built in your mind, that how the hands are placed and how the things are done. But in the start you will have a difficulty, and you will learn with the time and experience. So this is a complex process, and the thing which makes it more difficult, that learning, there is no direct way of learning, and the learning is not observable. Learning is always measured through the changes in motor behavior. So it will be guessed, the amount of learning will be only guessed through the performance. So you will check the performance, and then you will define how much learning is there. So what are the measures of learning? Obviously, I have already tell you that only through the performance you can understand that there is some kind of learning has developed in the mind. So if there is improvement in the performance, so it means that the patient or the person is learning, and he is motor learning is there, and the person is now better understanding the task, and usually it results from practice and your experience. The second thing, how you can measure the learning, is retention. Retention is simply that if there is a gap, which is called retention interval, and after that gap, if the person is able to execute that skill after that gap, that is called retention. Like usually the retention for our procedure memory, our motor skill is quite better. Like if you used to go on a bicycle in your childhood, that even after 5 to 10 years, if I'll give you a bicycle, you will be able to run that bicycle without any problem. So this is called retention, that the learner has the ability to demonstrate their skill over time and after a period of no practice. This is called retention. Then there is a term, another measure of learning can be adaptability. Adaptability is that you will ask the patient to perform that specific skill, but in a different environment. Like first you were performing a skill, you were performing a mobilization on your normal class fellow. Now I am asking you to perform that same skill on a bedridden patient. So if you can adapt and you can refine the skill, and you can adapt the according to the situation, according to the task and the environmental demands, then this is called adaptability. The final thing is resistance to contextual change. It means that simply if the context environment is changed, like if you were like performing a walk training for a patient, a gait training for a patient, and you were previously doing it in your clinical settings. Now you ask the patient to demonstrate that gait training in a corridor or in some social settings, then it is called adaptability to and resistance to contextual change, that even if the context and the environment is changed, the patient can still perform that activity in the same manner. So this is resistance to contextual change. Actually it is blending with the term of adaptability. Resistance to contextual change is actually adaptability to environment, and when we talking about the adaptability, that is adaptability of both things, changing task and environment, both are included in the adaptability. So simply, motor learning is learning some skill or refining some skill. And how the learning can be measured? Learning cannot be measured directly. It cannot be observed directly how much learning you have done. Like I cannot judge how much you have learned from this lecture unless I put up some examination and I examine your performance. So that will be the way to measure the learning. Same is the case with the motor learning. If you want to measure the learning, you will have to see the improvements in the performance. You will have to see the retention. You will have to see the adaptability, both of the task and both in the contextual change. So these are the measures of the learning. Now coming towards the theories of motor learning, there are certain theories that define motor learning, that what is the basic concept underlying learning. So there is a theory that is called Adams theory of motor learning. This is actually based on the closed loop system. We have just discussed the closed loop system, where that gets that there is some sensory feedback. Then that sensory feedback will be compared with the stored memory of that previous stored memory, or a correct memory of that performance, the reference of correctness and error reduction. And after that, that will be improved. So memory, where the like sensory feedback is like compared with stored memory. So the things which are practiced, the we have already listened, the practice makes a man perfect. Actually, practice leads to a strong perceptual or motor memory. So strong perceptual or motor memory will lead to better learning and better understanding and better performance in other terms. So this is a very good theory to explain how learning occurs during slow linear responses, but it cannot explain the things which occur under open loop system when there is no sensory feedback and when the movement is too high. So Adams theory is very good, and it explain when there when it's slow learning and there is a sensory feedback, then that is compared with the reference of correctness, and then there is error detection, and then there is refinement of the movement, and then there is practice to define that movement. It is very good to understand how linear and slow movements undergo motor learning. But when coming towards the open loop system, then this theory has some shortfalls. Then the schema theory, which was produced by Scamet, that comes to help us. Schema is simply say it is a rule, a concept, or you can say a relationship formed in your mind that is on the basis of previous experience memory. Like your brain is trained that whenever you see a speed breaker, you will apply the brake. This is a schema, this is a concept, this is a relationship developed in your mind. Like even in the latest theories, when they say that if you want to build a habit, then you develop a rule. Like whenever you will drink a glass of water, you have to sit down. This is a rule. You will have to develop this rule in your mind. So certain schemas are formed. They can be, sometimes they are natural, and sometimes you have to learn them, and you have to learn them by yourself. So a rule, a concept, a relationship is formed, and usually it is formed on the base of practice or experience of memory. So simply a generalized motor program, which is simply gives motor programs that can be specified before movement initiation is there, but a generalized motor program is there, and variety of similar actions can be produced. You can take an example of a person, like in cricket, you see bowling action, or you see the batting action. This is a simple same movement. There is a generalized motor program to that, but according to the situation, the batsman on the bowler will generate a much variety of the similar action. Even if you say that similar bowling can be, there is so many actions like googly or many others. I can't even know the names of all. There is so much variety in the similar action, and that can produce different results. So that is actually an example of that the brain has a certain generalized motor program feeded in that, and a generalized schema feeded in that, and that can be changed according to the learning. So actually, there are some short-term memory of some initial conditions which were settled that for that, like that all of that the ballers know that where they will be white ball or no ball. There are some initial conditions set up in the mind. Actually, that is your procedural memory or motor memory. Now, schema are actually there are two types of schema. Which is one is recall schema that where the generalized your GMP is adjusted based on some memory. Like that that was the correct action, and you adjust your further action according to that. That is according to recall schema. Um, you can say that it comes under closed loop system. Then there is a recognition schema. This you can say that it comes upon sorry recall schema closed loop. Okay, the recognition schema, it only helps you when you have made some error, and it will do only when there is some error, then the error will be recognized and then it will be corrected. So there are two type of schemas. One is recall, that is simply based on the memory, and one is recognition, where you will like recognize whenever there is a mistake and you need a reattempt or you need to correction when the recognition schema is coming into action. So coming towards the clinical implications of schema, I have just told you that simply variety of movement tasks can be practiced, and it improve your learning, and it leads to the development of many schema. If you are practicing your movement, like you are just practicing your movement to how to shift from a bed to a wheelchair, then the patient should the same movement should be practiced in a variety of manners, like shifting from the wheelchair to the toilet seat, from the toilet seat to the bag, from the wheelchair to the chair, from chair to the bag. So variety of tasks, if as we practice variety of a task, that will lead to a better improvement, and that will lead to a development of many schemas. And moreover, every person have a signature way of performing a simple activity. You can't like make it very robotic. Every person have a signature way, and even there is a variety in that. So moreover, when we'll do that, a variety of movements are practiced, the patient will be able to perform that movement like in his, like you are like making him practice in your clinical setting, but the patient will be able to perform the same action in his home setting, or in if it is come towards the instrumental activities, he will be able to adapt the activity according to the environment without any problem. So coming towards the stages of motor learning, there are three stages of motor learning. One is cognitive, the next is associative, and third is autonomous. Actually, every skill you learn, you will go through these stages. One is cognitive, and the next will be associative, and the third one will be autonomous. You can simply say first is cognitive, when you will develop your mind schemas, you will like develop an understanding. Just take an example of mobilization. You will understand in your mind, you will mean that this is the angle, this is the correct angle, this is where I can locate, this is the spinous process, and what are the grades of the mobilization. These are all cognitive stages. Associative stage is where the fine tuning is there. Autonomous stage is where the thing comes so automatic, and it comes to your spinal levels, and you can perform multiple other things with that. Now, this is an example of your cognitive stage. Just learn by the example of when anyone first tries to learn car driving. You have to consider where is your brake, where is your clutch, where is your gear, when you have to apply the brake, when you have to apply the, and you are conscious all the time, and still there are very problems. So when you have to, at this stage, you have to understand what to do. This is the cognitive stage. You have to develop cognitive maps. So you just develop overall understanding of the skill. This is a stage where trial and error is there, and the frequent feedback is required. And the patient, not only frequent feedback from the therapist side or the trainer side, but the patient also needs self-evaluation and correction. The next time you will do better, next time more better. So remember, whenever your patient is on the cognitive stage and you are just trying to make him a cognitive map of the skill, at that time you need to provide frequent feedback. In the start of like if you simple gait training, you need to give frequent feedback on every step, like lift up your foot and elevate your leg. You have to give frequent feedback on each and every point in this stage. So this is the take home message, that how can I concentrate on my driving test if you keep screaming like that? Frequent feedback doesn't mean that you shouldn't allow the patient for self evaluation. It means that it should be frequent, but it shouldn't be too frequent that there is no time for the patient for self evaluation. Then there is associative stage, and this is the stage where you have learned the basics. Now you need to go towards perfection. So this is the fine tuning stage, and the fine tuning is can only be done through practice. So in that case, like you see, like in the start when you learn car driving, you rely on your vision. You see the brake, you see the gears, but in this stage there is less reliance on the vision and more reliance on the proprioceptive cues, like your body gives you information and you don't need to rely on the vision. So anticipatory adjustments are there, and you will like adjust the corrections even before the error occurs. So this is the associative stage. Now, this is an example of autonomous state when you are so perfect that you can perform multiple activities at a time and dual, rather triple task and rather four tasks are being performed in this picture. So this is the autonomous stage where the movement becomes automatic. Very minimal attention is required. You can do other tasks simultaneously, and you can adapt according to the different. You can go to the hilly areas if coming towards the car driving. So the adaptability is very high. You can adapt to any situation, task, demands, environmental condition. No instructions are required. But in case of patient, the patient may require instruction if there is consistent mistake. There is some mistake that is recurring and there is symptoms appear again, or there are some other problems. Then the patient may need assistance if the other factors like the first thing was individual. If there is some individual, there is some symptoms appearing, there is some other problem, there is some muscular issue, there is some weakness issue, then the patient may need instruction. Otherwise, there is no need of instruction at this stage. So this was all for today's lecture. We just talked today about what is motor control, what are different theories, and how you need to, like the main thing is that you need to understand that movement can be learned and you need to go through motor learning for that, and the motor control for that is involved. We have certain open loop control systems, some closed loop control system, and you may need the patient to self-evaluate and correct the movements, and the practice is there, and your feedback is very important. In that case, you need to provide a very specific, very precise feedback. In that case, patient will be able to learn a correct pattern. As you all know that in our patient cases, the neurological cases, patience is the key. Sometimes you have to practice on a single stage and a single step many times. So patience is the key, and you have to be very patient to develop motor learning. So that's all for today's lecture. I hope you will find it beneficial for you and for your patients as well.